So I'm going to do a little eyeshadow tutorial. Ignore this eye, that was for my eyeliner tutorial. So again, I'm just going to start with the Morphe priming eye primer. I'm using only half the amount because I'm only doing the one eye. I'm just applying that just where I'm going to do all my eyeshadow. And blending it out. I put way too much on. With any kind of primer, you always want to start with less and then add more if necessary. You only want the tiniest amount of primer because it acts as a barrier. And if you have too much stuff on your eye, it can do the opposite of what you want it to do. It can make your products move around more because there's more stuff there. It can add more texture and all sorts of stuff that you don't want. So just start with a little bit, really work it in, and then if you find you've missed a spot, then just add a bit more. But make sure you pat it really well or apply it and blend it out really well, just so there's no texture difference. I've applied it fully all the way out. I don't know how big we're going to go, but we'll see. I always start with my eyes before I do the rest of my face. I've been doing that for like the last couple years. I find it's really easy for me because I do such big eyeshadow looks and use so much eyeshadow that I can really clean up everything afterwards, and I'm not going to get, the fallout's not going to matter because there's no foundation or anything like that to affect it, but everyone's different, so do what you like basically. Some people prefer to do their foundation and their whole base first, so just find what's comfortable for you. So today I'm going to try and keep it quite simple. I'm probably only going to do 3, maybe 4 or 5 colours, I'm not too sure. And we're going to use the Morphe 350 Supernatural Glow palette. I like this palette, I really do. It's a good price for one, and it's got heaps of natural, neutral sort of tones. There's some warm browns, there's some cooler tones, there's a bit of shimmers in there as well. And it's a nice palette. It's really beginner friendly as well. I've got a whole mix of brushes, but I'm mostly going to be using these ones. I might add more as well. But I've got the fluffiest, not so fluffy, and then quite dense. So I use a variety of brushes. So I don't know what I'm doing. So I never know what I'm doing with my eye looks. I just do it, basically. I really like warm tones on me personally, so I think I'm just going to stick to the warmer tones. I'm going to use a light colour, a medium colour, and the darkest colour. So you can recreate this eye look using any kind of colours that you want, if you want to recreate it too. But I want to keep it nice and simple, so we're going to start with a light colour. So this is going to be like a light, I want to go with, that's a bit green. I'm going to go this one here. Can't even see what I'm doing. But this one here. So it's like a soft peachy kind of tone almost. Like a really soft orangey colour. And so I'm putting a decent bit on there. Decent bit on the brush. Tape off the excess, and that will help stop fallout as well. So normally with eyeshadows you want to add definition to the eye. So I am just going to start by doing my crease. That's how I start most eye looks. So I'm finding where the crease is and just working that product back and forth. Using soft strokes, picking up a little bit more product as necessary, keeping it in the crease where I want it, and then blending outwards. And I just pick up a bit more product and reapply as necessary, and just blend as you go. I'm holding the brush quite far down at the end. I find that helps get less pressure. So the closest to the head that you hold it, the more pressure you're going to get, and so the more intense colour you get. But the further down you hold it, the softer the colour is going to be. And so I pretty much just take my time, just keep going in with that same colour on the same brush, and just keep building up that crease colour until I am happy with it. You always want to start with less and build up as you go, because it's much harder to try and remove it all. So I've changed my mind. I'm blending this above the crease now. Because I have such big eyelid space that you can keep it as small as you want. Something like that. I'm also going to bring a little bit in the inner corner. But that's the thing with makeup, you can just play around and just do what you like and sort of experiment. I think I might do, forgotten what it's called, like a halo eye is the technical term. You don't have to know all these terms, but it makes it easier knowing what you're talking about. So I've got that full base colour from that fluffy brush all the way across my crease and then blended it up as well. If I wanted to, I would use a colour that's in between my natural skin tone and that peachy colour just to blend the edges a bit more, but I feel like that's pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with that. It looks quite good. So now I'm just going to take my slightly smaller brush, so we've gone from this to this, because we want to focus that colour a little bit more. And so grab my palette again, just before we went in with, oh, hard to see, this colour here. So it's quite a light orangey shade. I'm quite pale, so everything looks quite bright on me. And I'm going to go, I want to use this colour. I'm terrible at this, I'm sorry. But I really like this camely brown kind of colour. So that's our first colour, and then we're going to step it up and go a bit darker with this one here. As long as you use colours that are similar to like the orangey sort of tones, it makes it a lot easier. So our lightest colour, our medium colour, and then we'll go for a browny sort of tone for our darkest colour. So I've got that camel kind of brown colour, our second colour, on my brush. Loaded it up a decent bit. Tap off a bit of the excess. And now I'm going to focus that even more in my crease, mostly on the inner and outer corners. Turn this a little bit. So mostly in the crease just there. And I'm keeping my movements quite small and quite tight as well. So just little circles, little windshield wiper movements, just to get that sort of colour where I want it. Now I'm going to go back into that same camel kind of colour. I'm going to go on the inner corner and just do that same thing, just keeping it nice and small, nice and tight. And just keeping it right there. Just like that, more or less. And I'm going to take my first brush with nothing on it at the moment, just, you know, what was left over from before. And then just really lightly go over the edges of it, not the actual bit where we've just coloured in, but just the edges, just to soften off any harsh lines. You can even go back in with your first colour, that lighter orangey tone, and just sort of build up the colour a bit more and just blend out those edges. You're going to blend and blend and blend and blend and blend until basically your arm feels like it's going to fall off. Like if your wrist doesn't hurt, you didn't blend enough. And then same on that inner corner bit. Just blending and softening. Just like that sort of thing. I do want to go back in with my second brush and just deepen that camel kind of colour again. Just because our blending did take a bit of it away. So I'm just really focusing it in that same spots that we did before. Doing more of like a patting kind of motion, not too much sweeping. If you pat the product on, you'll get better colour payoff versus if you're sweeping. So sweep to blend, circles to blend, patting to get more colour. It's the biggest thing that I've learned. can even sort of pat just to blend the edges just that little bit as well. And so now we're about here. We've used 2 colours. I'm just going to go back in with that first brush and just blend it again. You can always go back in and reblend it if it feels a bit much. The more you blend, the better it will look. Cool, so now we're going to move on to our third colour. So just a quick recap. We started off here, and then we went to that nice camel kind of colour, and now I'm going to go on with this deeper browny sort of tone up here. So it's not quite as dark as some of the other browns, but it's still definitely a bit deeper than our camel tone. So if you wanted to, you could do this with like a light pink, medium pink, dark pink. You could do blues, you could do browns, you could do whatever colour you like, silver, grey, you know, things like that as well. But you kind of want to, I find it's easy to start with the lightest and then build up to darker, but you'll find your own groove sort of thing with it as well. But just keep it simple. So now I'm focusing that colour even smaller again. And I mostly want to bring this down to sort of around my lash line and just that outer corner there. Just kind of like that. You can stop like that if you wanted to, if you want to have a more rounded sort of shape and, you know, emphasize the eye shape. But I like to do a more winged kind of shape. So what I do is I just sort of bring it out this way to like a point. Just like that, just flicking it ever so gently outwards. Maybe not quite that far. And then I'm just blending and softening those edges like that. I've got nothing else on my face at the moment because I'm starting with the eyes, so I can get away with just going a bit crazy and just blending it out, but you'll figure out things that work for you. And then I'm just going to go back in with that second camel kind of colour and just really define that outer sort of area, that outer part of my crease. And like, the thing is with makeup, you can change it and you can build it up as you go sort of thing too. It's not set in stone, it's just makeup for crying out loud. But you know, there's so much you can do with it and so many possibilities and so much to play around with. And I'm just blending, 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 just like that. And you can see that's just sort of elongated my eye instead of making it round. But anyways. Now I'm going to go in with that smallest brush that we had and that third colour we had, so the darkest brown tone. Tap off the excess, and then I'm just going to go in the inner corner. Keeping it as small as possible, doing little patting motions. Not too much sweeping, just pat, pat, pat. And that will just add a bit of definition. It's quite nice. And then just going in with that second colour with that little bit of that camel-y colour left over. And just keeping those edges nice and soft. Might just blend that there too. And just something like that. How soft. So that's 3 brushes, 3 colours so far. I like to do a shimmer. I'm feeling a bit shimmery today. So I'm going to pick a shimmer. Simple as that. So you can see I have a few different options. Personally, I prefer the more golden warm tones, but it's personal preference, so you can do whatever you want basically. You just want your, ideally for like a halo eye sort of look, you want the middle bit to be brighter than the outside corners, because the outside corners will be pushed back because of the shadow and that middle bit will come forward. So what I like to do with a lot of like shimmery kind of colours is I actually just apply it using my finger. I find it's a lot easier to really get in the colour, and you don't get as much fallout in my opinion. So I'm pretty much going to go in with this goldeny, buttery, shimmery kind of colour here. I'm just loading up my finger just like that. And then I literally just press it on. Press it on. And even just patting it in like that will help to just sort of blend it. So you mostly want to start, sorry, I keep flipping the camera off. You just want to start in the middle and then work your way up. I prefer using my middle finger or even my ring finger just because there's not as much pressure, so I'm not trying to offend anyone. This is literally just how I do it. And then yeah, once that's kind of on there, I'm pretty happy with that. Almost. So I'm just going to take my second brush that we used and that camel colour again. Tap off the excess. And I'm just going to soften the edges of that goldeny tone. Just a little bit, nothing too much, too crazy, but just so it doesn't look too harsh. And so I'm using like a mix of blending and sweeping, like patting and sweeping. I'm trying to keep it quite tight and quite small. I don't want to be blending that gold all over the place. Just something like that. My big old basket full of makeup goodies over here too. So now that, that is basically the whole eye look done. Another thing I would do is add like a little inner corner sort of highlight of a different colour. So like the highlight that I would use on the rest of my face, I would also pop that in the inner corner. So let's just do that. This is totally optional. I like to do it. So I'm just using this random palette that I got from a friend. I don't have a clue what it is. There's no packaging at all whatsoever, but I really like this pinky shimmery tone. I think it's just so pretty. Reminds me of a fairy. And my goal in life is to be a fairy. So let's just pop a little bit on the inner corner, and it just helps to brighten that area. It's very different seeing these two very different eyes, but it's the way the cookie crumble. And then I'm just going to clean up this edge here. So I am using a little bit of the e.l.f. Camo Concealer. This one's in the shade Matte, in the matte finish. I'm not a huge fan of the finish of it. I find it's a little bit too dry for me. So I literally just put a little bit there and a little bit there. I find that quite nice. And then I don't know where my actual foundation brush has disappeared to. Oh no. So normally I would use like a little foundation brush or like a concealer brush just to blend it out. You can also use like a beauty blender, but I'm just going to use this random brush that I found. It might not work, but we'll see. This concealer is also the wrong colour for me. And this brush is way too big. But I basically just want to highlight that bit there. If it's not quite working, you can always use your fingers. The warmth from your fingers will also help to warm up the product, and that can help it blend. Get out there. My eyelashes are molting. And then normally I'd have my foundation brush, which is a slightly different shape to this one. And I just blend it like that. And that just really lifts it and cleans up that whole area. You can also use a beauty blender or your fingers, so and like this colour is a bit too light for me. It is in the light peach, so if anyone's quite pale and likes a matte concealer, I would recommend this one. I'm just blending that out. And I don't like to put too much product in the centre just because that's where I have a bit more texture to my eyes, and I find this can really help to just sort of lift and highlight that area. But you can really see the difference versus this eye here and through here versus that one as well. But yeah, and then I would just follow this up with mascara, do the rest of my foundation routine, do my brows and stuff like that, and that's basically it. That's simple-ish. I don't know, I don't do simple makeup, sorry. But that's kind of one of my go-to eyeshadow looks.